The ping was small, an old sound he had not heard since just before arriving here. Not the bark the portfolio used for margin calls, not the soft chime the directors used when they wanted to backdoor something through his territory. This tone had a grain to it, a burr like a key turning in a lock that had rusted but never failed. It cut across the big room, through the steam glass and the filtered air, and landed in his bones. He didn't look up at first. The feeds went on without him, rows and tiers of screens knotted into a globe that floated above a viewpoint to his arenas. Each pane carrying a thread of Chandurax. Columns of men in color lines. Rings cut into gravel with a drain at the center. A narrow bridge iced by the node and turned slick on cue. The world had been wired to perform. The upper elite made a business of it. Muscle knitted wrong on purpose. Bones reinforced and hinged where nature never asked for hinges. They walked into other people the way farmers walk a field. Hands with director perks toggled hazards on a panel, heat up, water down, smoke now. The system paid bonuses for spectacle. An arm torn clean got you a spike in view time. A surrender got you a dip. Above, the screens carried it all clean. Slow motion on impacts. Heartbeat overlays. Stamina bars taking to red. On one pane a boy ran down a tunnel until a donation activated spike traps down the entire run. On another a woman fought three men with shock lances while the chat voted which way the floor should tilt. It tilted. Someone sent a burst of coins and a sponsor tag flared across the top of the frame as if to bless the moment. Text crawled along the bottom edge naming names and odds and the time to next event. Bids printed over faces. Extra hounds, 15 seconds blinked in amber, then went green when enough money changed hands. No mercy trended. In the corner a counter rolled through the dead and the maimed and put a soft chime on the price change of a death on Chandurax. On another screen a man balanced on a ledge designed to be an inch too narrow. The camera kept his eyes in frame and let the chat climb. A timer in the bottom right hit 0. The ledge retracted by a thumb's width and the world went quiet. The feed cut to black and came back on a new match and new names. Retention was holding. The ping came again, and this time he allowed himself to smile. He lifted his hand. The room paused. Not the world, just the parts that answered to him. The globe of screens held its breath. The ribbon stopped mid-digit. Only the wind that Chandurax made for itself went on hissing against the glass. The notification lived where he kept the old things. Not in the market stack, not in the legal drawer, but in a little shelf of personal software whose styles had gone out of fashion a lifetime ago. When he opened it, the glyph work was crude, the colors flat, the borders too thick. It pleased him more than it should have. Questline. Black Ledger, directly caused the death of an entire sentient population of a planet. Status, pending completion. Event, trace acquired. Target, redacted by design alias, last child of Chandurax. Distance, course, plus or minus 3 sectors confidence, 0.18 0.24 0.31. He made a small sound that was not a laugh. Ah, he said to nothing. You. The skill that had found it was one of those things he coveted for centuries now. He knew it would prove to be expensive to throw away this hint. His tracking suitor did not triangulate so much as make inferences from absence. Galactic tracking, constellation of losses, the tooltip said, as if the marketing copy were still doing its job. It did not return a map with a red X. It returned a sense of tilt in the firmament, the possibility of success at long last. He had been patient. Bored, but patient. Open the probability field, he said, and the room obeyed. A new sphere slid out of the dark above the pit and nested itself within the globe of Chandurax feeds. Threads stretched across it, weak lines, faint as hair, running between nodes of commerce, rumor, network chatter, omens. He wanted this. It was his plan from the first memo to the last signature. He drew the corridors where the cameras would survive, set the weather to grind down the rest, timed the aquifer salts, and paid for 3 neat wars that never touched the heritage vistas reserved for the brochure. The word he used in meetings was overhang. The word in the contract was optimization. The word in his head was mine. He wasn't pushed into it by numbers, he bent the numbers until they obeyed. A board seat with a vote that mattered. Naming and publishing rights on a quarter of worlds. A grip of compromise on rivals and allies alike. Confirm claimant, he said, because form had always been fun when he was in the mood for it. Claimant, owner class/primary shareholder rights, direct action authorized, no inquest prize, sealed, ancient. He had been a boy when he agreed to it. That is how they get you on the big council quests. The sovereign interests only accepted lifetime loyalty. The wording had been clumsy. The iconography had been romantic in a way that made his present teeth itch. But the ledger had stamped it with the good stamp, The one that still carried weight across worlds. Honor among predators. A promise that if he did the work he could have his piece of whatever secret lay at the end. He flexed his fingers. He felt the old pull behind the wrist bones, the one that starts when a hunt finally picks up a scent. It pleased him to be pleased. He had begun to suspect he had lost that capacity. Boredom had seen him dissolve more men than war. He let the feeds run again. The globe lilted. Threads advanced. Someone sprinted across a hex field that went from green to red and paid for it. A story editor Algo offered 3 alternate arcs for a contingent of prisoners whose leader was about to be made into a symbol. He glanced at them. In one, she repented. In one, she betrayed. In one, she became useful as a villain for 8 to 12 episodes. He picked the third without reading the footnotes. You enslaved algorithms because they did not bleed when you told them to do things untenable to man. The quest window sat patiently in the upper left of his vision, archaic and perfect. He fished from another drawer a different tool, the good one, the one no one admitted existed because it was not strictly legal in jurisdictions where torture still had a definition that insulted efficiency. He did not need it for this. He opened it anyway because the ritual calmed his hands. Shift the content mix in Chandrak's sectors 9 through 12, he said. Quietly boost stories about last heirs and dying bloodlines, and get the line "the last of anything matters" circulating in the rumor nets and low-signal channels. The director modules acknowledged, happy to be useful. He watched 3 feeds tilt by half a degree as lines were reweighted. He had just started the hunt and baited his trap. The tracking sphere hiccuped. The confidence ticked again. 0.37. 0.41. There. Verneth Vale flickered in the tags like a whisper in another room. Civic network pings. Safe zone scaffolding. Nothing a normal auditor could subpoena without getting 5 polite letters warning of jurisdictional disdain. If he closed his eyes, he could have named the last 10 people who had tried to tell him what he had done on Chandrak's was wrong. He remembered none of their faces. He had never been good with faces. He remembered instead the dividend that paid for the ship he used as a summer house in a system where the sunsets came in threes. He remembered the article that called him an innovator in resource transitions. He remembered the way the floor in this very room felt underfoot the morning the final compliance report was signed and the world was finally allowed to be called what it had been from the start, a product. He opened his eyes. On the big screen in the east quadrant, a pit fight resolved the way it was meant to. The survivor sobbed without sound because the microphones didn't pay for that package. The crowd, such as it was, cheered at the illusion of choice. He pitied them, slightly and briefly. "Show me variance on the tracker," he said. The sphere obligingly morphed into a cloud of numbers and uncertain arrows. This was why men like him had invented the systems and skills to wrap around something an underpaid engineer had built and a very old ritual had licensed. It made luck look like a tool. He considered telling one of his proxies to go to Verneth Vale and start the formal work of prizing a safe zone open like a shell. He did not. It was too soon. The numbers were honest enough to embarrass anyone who moved a fleet on them. Besides, he did not want the council to think he needed help. Besides, there is a point past which delegating feels like surrender. He did laugh then, soft and delighted, the way a man laughs when he finds a toy from his childhood and discovers it still works. "At last," he said. "At last we can finish our lesson." He did not say kill him. He did not need to. The room was Chandrak's, and Chandrak's always understood the assignment. It would go on doing what made it valuable until he told it to do something else. He rolled a quest window between finger and thumb as if it had weight. From the far distance of the authorized bands came a last, small confirmation, the kind that would not stand up in court but would stand up in a private myth. Alias cross-reference, cell, prob 0.63 context, bard/threnody/discordant. Region, Verneth Vale, civic node active still the entertainer I see, he said to the room. Interesting. He let the feeds resume their cut and stitch. He walked to the glass and set his palm against it. The desert on the other side pretended to be a horizon. The wind kept its promise and scoured the city until it shone with a radioactive glow. "Come find me, the bastard of Chandrak's," he said at last, not loudly and not to any person. The room heard him anyway. The skill took the order down to its quietest tooth. It would take time. The probabilities would wobble. Someone would try to save the boy. He would watch, because watching was the only honest luxury he had left. Soon enough the numbers would stop pretending to be shy and step into a shape only death could deliver. When the reward door opened, he would be there. The text did not say what was inside. He loved it all the more for that. He had lived long enough to grow bored of profits that could be counted. This was older, and older things pay out in power and blood. both of which he craved now more than ever. On one of the lower screens, a boy reached the end of a corridor that the algorithm had marked with a green strip of light. At the end of it there was only a drop. The camera cut before the fall in a way that made the last frame look like flying. "Good," he murmured, pleasantly. "We have our tone."